Well, hello and welcome today to the second episode in Art Management in Africa, debate, discourses, and practices. My name is Taiwa Folabi. I'm really excited to be coming live to you again today on this second episode, which we're going to be talking more about later, shortly. I'm dialing in from the territories of the Anishinaabeg, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Nakota, the homeland of the Métis and Métis nations, also known as Treaty 4, Regina in Saskatchewan in Canada. And I'm really excited to be co-hosting this today with Natasha. So I'll pass it on to Natasha to quickly introduce herself. And then, yeah, so over to you, Natasha.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Natasha Eck. I'm delighted to be here co-hosting. I'm an artist, arts admin, producer, and project manager. I'm here located in Durham in Ontario, and I'm excited to get started. So thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. Really excited that we have two amazing guests today to talk to share their experience on the administration of art and culture organizations. And I'm hoping that Ismail and Ahmed will speak not just only to their own context in South Africa and Egypt and other spaces that they've worked, but they can also speak to the art of administrating the art and culture organization broadly on the continent. But before I invite them, I'd like to just kind of do a quick shout out to all our partners. Thanks to HowlRound TV for always believing in this vision and really working with us for the partnership. Thanks to the theater, to the Center for Social Engaged Theater at the University of Regina, where I serve as the founder and also the director of the center that houses my Canada research here in social engaged theater program. Thanks to Pan-African Creative Exchange PACE for the partnership and collaboration on this project. Thanks to Kininso Creative. And also a big shout out to Theatre Hemisphere International and its Social Enterprise Mobile Research Lab. It takes a village to raise a child, as well as say in the African maxim. And this is an example of that. So these series won't be possible without the amazing work of all of these organizations and their collaboration. And of course, to La Cité Universitaire at the University of Regina, which is our French partner that are really for translation and interpretation, particularly for episode 3 and episode 5. In the first episode, we had Pascal from Namibia and Fraza Kiwawe from Uganda. And we really just kind of situated the entire series, really thinking around why is this topic important now? Of course, we, including myself and the two guests, Pascal and Fraser, we really talked about our journey into art administration. It started for some of us, it was just started from the unknown to the known, because nobody really taught us in school. We kind of learned on the job, and really the incredible opportunity to learn, to relearn, to unlearn, and to continue to go over that circle over and over and over again. We also talked about the need for us to really think about the privilege and the power that comes with art administration and the challenges, and how we can inspire those that are coming behind or that are doing it right now or that are thinking, I want to do it, but I don't know where to start. It was really a great conversation, and I really encourage our viewers to go back and watch and check it out. Today, we're really going to be exploring art administration, including issues around marketing, public relations, publicity, more broadly around creative industry on the continent of Africa. Um, we're really interested in looking at peculiarities of doing art management on the continent. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? What are the things we don't even talk about? And so today we have the privilege to have Ahmed El Attar, and I'm gonna allow Ahmed to really to introduce himself more broadly, and Ismail Mahomed. Both of them are coming to us from Egypt and from South Africa. And I have to tell you, I've heard their praise many times. In fact, from my trip in from Austria, many people mentioned Ishmael's name in the room many times when we're talking about art management and all of that. And of course, in a lot of things that I've done, Ahmed's name came up many, many times. So it's really a privilege to have both of them. We're going to be quizzing them and talking to them about their experience. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to Ishmael to introduce himself, and then Ishmael will pass it to Ahmed to introduce himself, and then Natasha, you take it away. So over to you, Ishmael. Please, we'd love to meet you to introduce yourself. So over to you.
Good evening from South Africa, and good afternoon to, and good evening and good morning to everyone else around the globe. And firstly, thank you very much to your partners and your sponsors for giving us this opportunity to cross across oceans and be able to engage with each other around the issues of arts administration and even arts leadership at a time when the globe is in crisis. I started my career in the arts by default, largely not out of choice, but because I was born during the time of apartheid in South Africa, where as a person of Indian origin or somebody who's defined by Biko tradition as being Black, did not have access to arts education or did not even have access to arts institutions at the time. So I started my working career in mathematics. But during that particular time, I wrote my first play without any training in the arts, simply by being exposed to theater at that particular time and having the urge and the passion to want to tell a story. Because it was 1976, the year when Soweto was burning. It was the youth uprising. And as a young person, I had a story to tell. And having been a finalist in that playwriting competition, I found myself gravitating from mathematics and more so into the arts. And it was only in post 1994, when we entered the dawn of a new South Africa with the release of Nelson Mandela becoming president, that the country changed, and I could make that conscious decision to go from mathematics into the arts on a full-time basis. But at that time, I realized I was much more older to want to learn the craft of making art, to be an actor or a dancer. By that age, you begin to grow a belly, you get old, you can't stand straight like a dancer. But what I wanted to do is to go into arts management, arts leadership, because I did not want a generation of South Africans that follow me to have the same struggles of lack of access, denial of opportunity, and the absence of arts in our life. And for the last 40 years, I've worked in mainly arts leadership positions, a choice that I don't regret at all and which I love. Thank you.
Thanks, Ishmael. Thank you so much. I want to pass it on to Ahmed. Ahmed, you founded and managed key institutions in Egypt, from the Cairo's oldest rehearsal space and training space to the Downtown Contemporary Art Festival, to the largest Egypt first annual International Contemporary Art Festival. Do you want to speak more to just introduce yourself, Ahmed?
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for having me with you. It's a great honor to be here, and I think I wrote to you when you first contacted me. I think it's a great project, much needed, and I'm very happy and honored to be here. I'm a theater director as well and a playwright, so Ismail and I have this in common, and. At the same time, I have a double hat. I'm also I would say a producer. Now you call it a culture entrepreneur, but the word entrepreneur for me is a bit, iffy. So I'd say I'm just a producer as well. And the reason I'm passionate about theater. That's my passion and my profession. I studied theater at the American University in Cairo, and I've been working in theater since then, haven't stopped. But I think it will be my sense of responsibility towards the community I live in and my belief in the arts and culture as a real tool for change and in a society, that made me move also towards production and creating spaces or projects or for the sector. And this is trying to create a mini ecosystem for the sector in Egypt and also in the Arab world, not just in North Africa, but the Arab world in its larger sense. And I would say that this sense of, I mean, I believe that artists should be artists only. If that's what they know how to do, then they shouldn't do anything else. It's fine. It's enough. Doing art, making art is more than enough. But when artists in our countries, in Africa and in other parts of the world that are, that need the kind of support that our countries do, if they have the capacities to do other things, if they have the capacities to transfer knowledge, create spaces, then it's their duty to do so. So yeah, that's how I did it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ahmed and Ismail. We're going to delve right into our questions for you, and you kind of touched on it a bit, Ahmed, just around the perspective of what art administration looks like in Africa today, in the creative industries. If you could comment on that, we could go to Ismail first and then to Ahmed.
Sure. Super. Thank you very much. It's very different across the continent because there are very few countries in Africa that really have a arts funding council. That's the one. The other is very few of them have an arts ministry that stands independent from science, technology, or tourism or education. The other is that there are very few that have protective rights for the arts sector. So in the majority of countries in Africa, and I'm going to refer specifically first to South Africa and then draw parallels with other places around the country, post-1994, although we have an incredibly liberal constitution which entrenches freedom of speech and freedom of creativity as part of our constitution, and coming from an apartheid state which barred freedom of expression and freedom of creativity, we're incredibly fortunate around how our rights as artists is protected. But that right extends simply to the making of art. It doesn't extend to the protection that we enjoy as people who work in the arts sector, because you don't have social benefits. You're not recognized as a worker as such, because to a large extent, it's a freelance working environment. We come from a history, we had the phrase, culture is a weapon of the struggle, which simply meant that the majority of arts people became activists first, and they use arts as methodology for their liberation struggle, or for struggles against other kind of political infringements and so forth. And that is not unique to South Africa. It pervades, or it presents itself across the continent in many, many countries. South Africa is fortunate in the sense that we do have legislation, we do have, funding arts councils, we do have a Minister of Arts and Culture, but that does not mean that it's all happiness for South African artists. There are major challenges in that. Although we have a minister, we've never had a minister that fully is passionate about the arts, because it's always a political appointment. And that for us is rather disappointing, in the sense that the governing party, or the majority party, which is the African National Congress, was incredibly passionate and strategic about how it engaged the arts in the liberation struggle pre-1994, but post-1994, it relegated us to the lowest rung of priorities. So we've never had a minister that's been strategic enough to develop the kind of policy and the regulatory environment to develop the arts. But more scary about that, or more frustrating about that, is that when the governing party was in exile across the continent, it built incredibly strong relationships. And arts and culture is an incredible way of building bridging and of developing a shared identity. And none of that has been encouraged over the last 30 years, very little. So what we do very much within the continent is that we often work in isolation as countries that have arts, functioning arts organizations and so forth. But when we do have international collaborations or exchanges, even between the continent, that is very often supported by institutions such as the Goethe Institute, the French Institute, various embassies that were our former colonizers. Mm. So, it's quite an irony that whilst we may have obtained liberation, the kind of artistic collaboration that we wish to do across the continent between artists and artist mobility, we're still incredibly dependent on what was former colonizer states to support. So, yes, there's a great deal of vibrant art happening on the continent, a great deal of superb art administration practices being developed, but it is very often not supported by the state and very often not shared between organizations and individuals at a very formal bilateral level. Where it exists, it's simply because arts organizations or individuals within those organizations have the vision and the passion to want to drive it themselves.
Thank you. Lots there. Thinking about that. Yeah, I kind of want to ask you more questions, but I also want to hear what if Ahmed has anything to add to that. Yeah, Ismail, what came to me, I'm going to just jump in because it's on the tip of my tongue. So you're saying that, the isolation and the organizations that do want to collaborate and bring these structures in place to support the interaction. So what is the answer?
Well, I think it depends largely on the arts sector and individuals who work in the arts sector. The fact that we can connect in this particular way across different parts of the globe and to have this real dialogue and conversation and to discover that very often we have the same challenges, the same passions, and the same histories. And I think, COVID-19 may have been a major challenge, but it also created an opportunity of this kind of dialogue. And I think at our center, we reap the benefits of that, of the kind of relationships and the engagement that we begin to build in the online space. But, whilst I speak so much about the isolation and so forth, it must also be noted that South Africa came out of a cultural boycott that lasted over 40 years, prior to 1994. But during that particular time, as a result of the cultural boycott, what we were able to do is to develop our own artistic signature, our own artistic vocabulary, and find our own ways of expression, because we were not exposed, we were not sold into other Western forms of culture. So we were able to develop very strong ways of creating and very, very strong practices within in the way we made art, and the way we manage art, and so forth. Post-1994 gave us the opportunity to share, exchange, learn, but more importantly, to offer experiences to the world around the practices we evolved during those very, very difficult times, and some which are incredibly strong models.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Ahmed, anything to add or put on the table in terms of your perspective around what arts administration looks like?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna, of course, I agree with what Ismail said. Basically, I mean, Africa, of course, is composed of many different, so many countries, so many different ethnicities, regimes, and everything. But I believe it has a common denominator. We are all ruled by oppressive, non-democratic regimes. We've grown up in them, we live in them, and we don't foresee the future, the near future at least, outside of that configuration. We all have, I mean, maybe not all of us, but most of us have great constitutions that says great things about rights and about, cultural rights and economic rights and everything. And the reality on the ground, unfortunately, is that we are stripped of most of our rights every day. And in some sense, the art and culture sector is the forward-looking, I see what Ismail is saying when specifically to South Africa about being activists first and then becoming artists. But even in other countries, when you're just artists working in that kind of configuration, well, you actually represent, in my opinion, a threat to the state. So it doesn't matter if the country has a Ministry of Culture or not, or a more structured art and culture sector, because at the end of the day, when you're speaking about the people, the artists, and the producers and the spaces behind them that are not within the consumption paradigm of art. But are more on the forefront of progressive, they will be outside the system. They will always be outside the system, no matter how brilliant they are. Either the system tries to recuperate them or they stay on the margins. And in the margins here, not meaning, I mean, some of them have amazing careers across the planet, and they're still on the margins in their own hometowns and our own countries. And in some sense, I feel that our work is to actually continue supporting these artists, these structures, helping them, move, not necessarily just leave the margin, but move closer to the center as possible all the time. Because for me, this is the future. This is what we should look for. Okay, these ideas that come out of there, the work that's coming out of there, is definitely the most pertinent. It's the work that asks the right questions, not necessarily providing answers, but asking the right questions. And the one of the main issues, I wouldn't speak about the continent of Africa because it's very different. I mean, South Africa is a big country. It has more or less a democratic structure in our African way. Egypt is a big country. I'm not going to speak about politics, but I think the common denominator when it comes to art and culture management is there's not enough institutions that actually teach art and culture management. If we look at the history of art and culture diplomas or degrees in the West, we're going back about 30 years, and in our continent, we're talking the last decade. And it's really not something that you see, I would say, in 10% of the countries in Africa. Okay, there is still not the perception that first of all, you don't need to be an artist to run an art and culture institution or run a culture project properly. Okay, and that art and culture management is different than actually having an MBA or having a management degree. So there's a space in the middle. And I think the first thing that we need to, like Egypt, for example, maybe 10 years ago, a little bit more or less, I don't remember, has a diploma in art and culture management within the High Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is the main academy of art and performing arts teaching in Egypt, and it's only in Cairo. Okay, we're a country of 120 million, with cities or governorates with like 7 million people, 8 million people. Cairo is 22, and you have one performing arts school and one diploma in art and culture management. It's not even a degree; it's a diploma. Okay, the other one is in Morocco. another program in one of the universities. And this is a big issue, because if you want to have people who are interested and who are capable of running institutions, of running projects, of putting these projects together successfully, you need a base to start from. I didn't have that. I didn't get that education until I was much older, actually. I did my master's in art and culture management in the year 2000. Okay, I was already well into my career. But even then, it helped me into putting in perspective the knowledge I've acquired on the ground. So I think education is key. And that's a starting point to start from, because we desperately need that. I'll give a small example. Egypt has a very centralized state. Okay, we go back to the pharaohs and the pyramids and stuff, and then we had the French dump their bureaucracy on us, so we ended up with this very centralized bureaucratic state. And the Ministry of Culture is modeled on the Russian model. So we've got 20-something theaters in Cairo run by the government. You have the technicians and the administrators and the actors and the directors on a payroll. Okay, I think we're probably the only one. I mean, that's not the Russian, that's like the Soviet Union. We're probably the only country left with those many theaters, with everyone on a payroll, okay, working or not working, doing a play or not doing a play. Of course, the salaries have decreased with the inflation, but at the end of the day, they are on a payroll. So most of the budget of a theater goes into paying salaries of people who don't work, they don't have work. And a little bit is going into production and the creative output and so on. I'm not going to even talk about censorship and red lines, but just this configuration, okay, cannot help the sector to grow or to develop or to whatever. We have about 500 culture palaces built by Nasser in the 1950s and 60s. In every major town, there is a culture palace that has a theater, a library, a rehearsal space. Half of those are not functioning. They're closed. And so for me, this is what arts management should handle and deal with. You need the capable people who are able to transform this into, I mean, this is great wealth. We've got the spaces, but we don't have the people to run it. And we don't have the people who can manage the budget to make it, I wouldn't say sustainable, because I hate this word in the art sector, the art and culture sector, but more viable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Natasha, could I maybe just add to what Ahmed says, is that we have a similar situation in South Africa, where you have the theaters that are established or run by the state. But those are the theaters that often become the least productive theaters, or the most challenging spaces for free-thinking artists to work in. Because what happens is that whilst you may have the best managers in those particular places, very often the boards or the governing councils are appointed by government. And those are bureaucrats who are not passionate about the arts, who don't have a vision about the arts, but who serve a political agenda of ensuring that whatever is presented in that institution speaks to the language of the governing party. And very often that's a form of censorship that prevails. And it's evident in many of the states across the continent. But, there are defiant arts managers. There are arts managers who go against the grain, who challenge the state on that. But that does mean that as an arts manager, you are placing yourself at risk in terms of career, because you could be pushed out. And with very few salaried positions, it does become a challenge. It becomes a muzzle that's put onto the mouths of most arts managers.
Interesting. I think both of you've and I know we're kind of you're moving ahead around what solution, I wanted to take a step back a little bit. Because you've identified some critical pieces on the continent. One is institutions on two levels. One institution more broadly around the political institutions, art funding councils, art ministries, and all of that. For me, that's one kind of institutions. And those that end up becoming leaders and those in charge of those institutions. And in many cases, they don't even have knowledge of what administration look like. They are not even storytellers. They don't know the business itself of the art. But the second part of the institutions that both of you kind of articulated clearly is around the education institution that is into building critical competencies and skill sets that are needed, because if we have that institution, more broadly on the continent, of course, like I said, we've said we have 1, 2, 3 here and there, but if we have them in robust number, that they can then build, critical expertise, competencies, skill set that can then feed back into the ecosystem. I wanted us to spend more time to kind of speak more to these nuances. So, Ismail and I, we were at PACE in 2023, and part of the critical things we talked about is that many of these art funding councils, British Council, Goethe Institute, and we love them, but the reality is that they are part of cultural diplomacy of another organization, of another country. And so in many regards, the reality is that Goethe Institute operation in Egypt, in Morocco, in Tunisia, and the places that all of them are operating, they are not necessarily operating based on these countries' cultural policies. They are operating on their own cultural diplomatic realities. Did you want to speak to that a little bit, both of you, and then from there to kind of scaffold into the education sector? What are the things we need to start looking for? Because I think that this point around education is really critical that both of you have raised. When we don't have when we don't build capacities, and I think that's something I left with that meeting in 2003, saying we need to build our capacity. We need to teach people how to do budgeting. We need to teach people how to do marketing. We need to teach people how to do public relations. We need to, like, when these funding opportunities come out, what we realize over the years by research is that the same set of people that this funding go to are those people that have built that competencies. And most of the time, they got that competencies based on the fact that they've worked many times off the continent and they came back, or they have or they've been there for many years and all of that. Again, and I'm kind of bringing two things together, but I want to both of these kind of just speak to that a little bit, maybe in terms of even your own experience with all of these two blocks that you've identified. So, Ismail, you want to go, and we'll pass it to Ahmed, if that's okay.
Sure, super. I recognize the immense value of cultural diplomacy. Yes, it serves the interest of the that's organizing the event or the program, but every single artist has aspirations to break out of the nest and to be able to work with artists from other countries, because it's an incredibly valuable opportunity. And where we don't have the funding and the resources or the vision of government to facilitate that, I openly welcome the collaborations we have with institutions like the Goethe, the French, the Flemish, the Dutch, and we've done wonderful collaborations. But I think it depends entirely on who the cultural leader is, who mediates or facilitates or executes those particular programs. And my approach with cultural diplomacy programs is that the institutions that I work with or for is not a dumping ground for external culture. There must be a meeting point in values. There must be a meeting point in artistic experiences. There must be a sharing of skills between artists. And if those underlying principles are there, and it's going to be a real dynamic engagement between artists and from our country and artists from another host country or one of those cultural diplomacy agencies, then you're going to have absolute magic in the program. And for me, that's been the basis of cooperation. And I'm incredibly fortunate that with all the foreign diplomatic missions that I've worked with in South Africa throughout my career, that we've been able to have an open and an honest discussion and talk about this. And I think, very often I'm not very keen personally on the kind of chase a grant closing date type of working environment. I prefer to have one that's built on handshakes, dialogue. And when you do that, then you can begin to find that you're going to have common grounds and you can begin to conceptualize a program together. So there could be merits to that. I think where you have institutions and organizations that are so desperate for international content and international collaboration, because there's no other way to be able to fund it or to realize it or to be able to engage the audience and offer them something, they're prepared to take anything that's literally dumped on them. But I think there's a growing awareness around arts managers to become a little more critical about those relations and about those partnerships. But it's not just what the exchange, but also to become critical of where funding is coming from. As arts managers, at some point, we literally complied with where funding is coming from. I think we're becoming a lot more critical, and we have the courage and the wisdom to say no, thank you, which is a really exciting dynamic in the arts, to be able to say no, thank you. The other issue around education for me is that a lot of the institutions put an enormous amount of energy into the craft and performance and the theory of the arts, very little into arts leadership or arts administration management. But that also has to do with the fact that every young student who registers to go into an arts lecture room does so because they want to be the next best dancer, the next best writer, or the next best performer. They seldom think, after their final year at high school, when they register for a university degree or diploma in the arts, that they want to become the next best arts manager. They only begin to realize that in their third year or their fourth year, or when the awakening arises that, hey, in a freelance environment, I may not always have work as an artist. So if I want to stick around in this job, maybe I should pursue arts leadership or arts management, where the opportunities and the chances are greater. I think what needs to really happen is that the institutions that offer arts programs need to put in a lot more energy into how they entice newer students to enroll for their programming. Having said that, I think the best leadership training in the arts doesn't necessarily happen at universities and colleges. I think it happens on the ground within institutions. So the more we encourage the kind of mentorship programs, internships, fellowships within institutions that are making art and practicing art, the better managers we will train for that particular sector.
Thank you, Ismail. Ahmed, over to you.
Well, again, I have to agree with Ismail. Basically, the relationship that we have across the continent with the different foreign culture institutions like the Goethe, the British Council, the French Institute, and so on, Cervantes. And we work with them all. We have great relationships. We've done great projects with them. And so many of our other colleagues. I think it's important to realize that they need us as much as we need them. And this is something that young managers or artists or practitioners sometimes they don't get it in the beginning, and they feel that they there is some sort of we owe them something. No, we don't. It's a collaboration. It's we're together in this. As much as you want to bring an artist to my country, I want to also bring that artist, but I want to bring the artist that I want, not that you want. And if you don't work with me, your experience is not going to work, because I'm on the ground. I know the audience. I know the capacities, what can be done, what cannot be done. I do the work on the ground, and this is so it's a quid pro quo. So we're both in it together. We're working together, and that makes the whole relationship very different. If what I find sad is that in order to collaborate with South Africa or with Burkina Faso, or I mean, I'm speaking about the countries that I've actually been to, or with North Africa, or even other parts of the Arab world, we have to go through France, Germany, UK. That is sad because it shouldn't be this way. I think that there is a lot of, and again, I'm very thankful for these opportunities. I was at the National Arts Festival last year in Makanda for a week, and that was a collaboration between a festival and a French Institute in South Africa. And I'm very grateful for these opportunities, but I'm always thinking, God, why can't there be some sort of a fund, or I mean, you know, I mean, I'm not hopeful in countries because I know that there are protocols and everything, but they're all just for show. There is no bilateral, multilateral relationships in Africa. Let's face it. Unfortunately, governments have their own agenda that doesn't take into consideration what really happens on the ground. And for me, this is something vital, because if we come to your point about education, there's so much that we can learn from each other. There's so much that, because we have so much in common. It's sometimes, of course, we've got a lot of differences, but we've got so much in common. I mean, economically, socially, politically, we have so much in common. We have so much experiences in common, and we have so much to learn from each other. And we're always looking north, okay, because that's somehow the only open highway. I mean, in order even to travel, I mean, to go to Burkina Faso, to go to Ouagadougou, I have to go through Paris or Belgium. There, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. We don't even have that open. Luckily, we have a direct flight to Johannesburg. But other than that, it's very it's not there. And we should, and education, learning from each other is vital for us, because right now, how I see the world over the past 10 years and how and where it's going, we're being rejected everywhere. I mean, as Arabs, as Africans, we are being rejected. The rise of the right-wing extremists in Europe and in North America is a clear message that this is no more an option for you today, and tomorrow is going to get even worse, and so on. And as much as I feel that we've contributed so much, not only with resources from our continent, but also with great minds and great things to that glamorous northern culture, whatever that is today, we have to start thinking that this is the season of migration to the north is less and less of an option, and we should start looking south, looking to ourselves and our neighbors and our continent. I'll give a small example. We're developing a program called CAT, Cairo Arts Tech, which is the only, right now, it's going to be the only technical program in Egypt. Although we have massive culture industries in film and music, in entertainment like concerts and stuff, we do not have a technical school. We don't have a school that teaches lights, sound, you know. We have like a camera in a film institute and set design, but we don't have a school for technicians, for creating technicians. So most of the technicians, they're either learned, you know, like in film, it's family, and families that are, for example, are grip on a film location, and they move it on from one generation to the other. Or in the performing arts industry and the music industry, they've learned it on the spot. And we feel that this is a great hindrance for the development of the sector, whether independent or even commercial. And we started that school. And when we started, the first outlook we had was like, okay, we have a lot of connections in the West. We've worked with a lot of great technicians, and we wanted to build a curriculum in Arabic, okay, that is taught every year and so on. And we started looking up north and contacted our contacts and different schools and stuff. But our reality is very different, okay? The equipment we have is very different. The funding we have is very different. And finally, we started, we're doing it bit by bit till we group it together. We looked at our own resources. So we have a few really good technical people who immigrated, who moved in the last decade, and who have gained experience, who've studied abroad and so on. And we brought them back. We brought them back temporarily to build this with us, even they could go and come back. And it's not only about the economic cost, that they cost less, not that we pay them less, but just the fact that we don't have to hire a translator to translate into Arabic every single day and so on. And all of that made a great difference, and made a great difference for us, for them, and for the communities they are teaching. And the idea is they will be the catalyst, and we have local trainers and so on. So we have to start thinking this way, and thinking to what we have as resources within each of our countries, but also in the countries around. We're actually developing something with Rwanda around the same program, to transfer the knowledge that we're building to them. So we don't have to invent the wheel in every African country all the time, but we can actually exchange that. So yeah, so this is, I think this for me is one of the ways to get out of the situation that we're in today.
Thank you so much. I just raised one final thought here, and I'll pass it on to Natasha for the next round of questioning. I think both of you're really speaking to these broader systemic and structural issues, from mobility. Like I hear both of you loud and clearly. To move from one part of the continent to the other, you have to go try another continent. Like there is no free access. You have to get visa. To get visa. Like even that in itself, brings a lot of friction in the reality of cultural entrepreneurs, cultural administrators, and whatever terminology we want to pin to that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, and I do agree that our cultural institution, our foreign cultural institutions, they're occupying and filling really important gap. And we have to really recognize that, and we have to give them that kudos, because imagine they're not in existence. That's the reality. And it's that we're then hoping that they can, through what they're doing, that it can inspire our own institution to take a stand to, many African countries, our cultural policies are outdated, to be honest. Or they are not operationalized, or so internally there are a lot of fractures that I think need to be rebuilt from an institution perspective, and all of those things, to even the education. So I think that it's really critical for us to think. Ahmed, you were talking about being, the local catalyst, the trainer. Ismail, you were talking, also really referring to that too, is that we need to take a step back as an institution, to say, how can we rebuild our ecosystem while we have resources that are available out there and that are ready to work with us, with this sense of mutual value system, of reciprocity, of respect, not dominance, not power over relationship, but saying that, we need you, you need us, to make the world go around, and things like that. Within all of that, my provocation to both of you, and then I'll pass it on to Natasha, is, in your over 4 decades of experience as art and culture administrators in various capacities, what are the things that you've learned that you think might be, that you just want to share with us, or with somebody that is really thinking about now that I'm hearing I mean, and our conversation today is very macro, in a very on a large scale, which again we designed it that way because we just don't want to look at just our bubble. We want to look at it more broadly. Based on your, and both of you, like I said, you've walked across the continent and beyond. What are the things that you've learned that you love to share based on what you've learned? And particularly for those that are thinking along this kind of operations and this kind of praxis. I'll start with Ishmael, pass it to Ahmed, and then over to you, Natasha. Thank you.
Yeah, as much as arts people, we don't like the word regulation or a regulatory environment. I think for arts organizations to succeed and to become functional and to grow, there has to be a level of a regulatory environment. You need to have a board with clearly defined governance rules for that board so that you don't have boards overstepping into operations. But likewise, you need to have a clear policy for management and the team that works there so that you don't then have that case of the board stepping in because they're told by government to step in and to break rules and censor. If there are clear lines around the vision of the organization, which is articulated in its founding documents or in its, in its governance articles, and with a board that has governed by a proper board charter, a management team that is governed by a regulatory framework around clear policies for labor, for growth, for the way you have standard operating procedures and so forth. I think for me, that is essential to making those organizations grow. And very often, you don't need to have artists do the arts very consciously, as initially started my career as a writer, as a director, as a producer. But when I decided that I'm going to go into arts management, I was very clear in my headspace that I wanted to be a manager who runs an organization, occupies a space, and allows an organization to function in the most effective way with the best possible team of people that will allow artists to be able to create, that will be able to make that organization run with strict governance protocols. In my previous occupation, as the director of one of South Africa's leading institutions, there was overstepping of the board. But not just overstepping, it was in the years when, you may have heard during the years of our last presidency, Jacob Zuma, where state capture had become the dominant language in our country, and there was corruption, and the board wanted to dip their hands into the pockets, into the coffers as well. And as a custodian of the organization and its management and so forth, the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, and I invoked the Whistleblowing Act, the Protected Disclosures Act, to safeguard the integrity of the nation. I think when you have that kind of regulated environment, you can challenge and you can know that the law will be on your side in most cases, and sometimes even beyond, or taking on the political landscape, which we did at the time was challenging the minister and defying him, and because it was a council that he had appointed. So for me, that's the start. And I think I'm quite pleased that when I look at South Africa, I find more and more arts organizations seeing the need to create regulatory environments for their organizations with key people that want to be in management roles because they bring the best of human resources, they bring the best of technical support, they bring the best of governance systems and so forth, which then allow the artists to make art with freedom and to flourish with their creativity.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah, I think that my desire to be an art and culture administrator was motivated by a set of skills that I had. I mean, I knew I had. I'm good at maths, so I'm not afraid of budgets or reports or all that kind, or proposals and stuff. I'm saying that because as an artist, it's a completely different world for me. I mean, when I'm working on a play, I actually step back and let the team I work with know that I'm just not there. And unless there is a catastrophe, just, don't call me. And they understand that because they're very different minds. And it's important that one is aware of their skills, because there is a set of skills that is needed. Organizational skills and, financial skills. I'm not an accountant, but I'm totally comfortable with budgets and things like that. And it's very important because when you're running an institution and in a case, or in a case of a lot of institutions on the continent, they're small and medium size. It means that they're understaffed, or they have staff that have to be multi-skilled in some sense. So it's important to have a certain set of skills. So this is number one. And number two is, I think that goes both for artists and for culture managers. Being humble in front of the work, okay? Feeling humble in front of the work, realizing that every project you start, no matter what your experience is, no matter what you've done before, is a new project with new challenges, new things that you will learn, and that you need to be aware of that, okay? And one of the motivations for me was, I have been in Cairo when I was young. I used to go to a film festival and to other festivals. There are not many, but there are a few, like the Cairo Film Festival or the Cairo Experimental Theater Festival. And it always, for me, I mean, even before I traveled outside of Egypt, or before I really knew that this is what I want to do in my life, I would go to the film festival, and you go to watch an Italian film at 3 p.m, and it said subtitled, and you either find the film with no subtitle, or you found that it was a Bulgarian film that you didn't necessarily want to see, or you found that it started at 6, or that it got canceled. And for me, that was really frustrating. And when I started touring with my work and going outside, and I saw how festivals ran, and I was like, why can't we do things like that? I mean, what is so hard in bringing the program of the festival not 2 days before, but a month or two before? What is so hard in starting on time, and in having the technical work being done properly, like when we go and show abroad? And this is what I wanted to bring in. And it has to do not only with my love of the arts and culture, but also with my sense of pride in myself and in my community. We could do this. It's not hard. We just have to know the way. And once we do, it's easy, it can be done, and it gives a great sense of pride. And I work with the team I work with are quite young, very young compared to me. And it's a great motivator. We're a young nation. We're 40% under 25. We're 120 million. That's like 50 million people under 25 and growing. So in like 20 years, there'll be 60% under 25. We're a really young society. And those young people, like myself in the past, they just want to prove themselves. They are not happy with how things are, not just politically, but the constant feeling of failure is really damaging to society, that we're not able to do this, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to be in art and culture management, to support the artists, but also to give an impression to the people working in the sector and to the audience. No, we can do this. We're capable of doing that. And I think that the impact for example, with D-CAF, it's our 13th edition. By the way, we're completely not funded by any official structure in Egypt. We're mainly international funds and collaborations and stuff. We have one private sector partner. And I'm not saying that we did that we influenced the sector, but the reality is, when you look at the Cairo Film Festival today, which is much older than us, like, I don't know, 50 years or something, at the Gona Film Festival, which is the new trendy, kind of on the Red Sea, red carpet film festival, and other festivals, old and new, their starting point is different. It's not the same. I don't say that we influenced that, but we definitely had a hand in that, because when you put in this environment where everything is chaotic and, it doesn't matter, so what, we cancel, oh, we're 2 hours late, oh, we changed the venue. When in this environment, someone or an organization comes and says, no, you're coming at 8, we're starting maximum 8:05. You come in to see the French show, you will see the French show. It has subtitles, it does have subtitles. Anything happens, we'll tell everyone before time, in time, so you can prepare yourself. And when you put that into this environment, the environment starts to shake, and people say, oh, wow, they can do it, so we can do it, and so on. And I feel that this is very important, to also have the perseverance to go on, because in a lot of time it's very difficult and very daunting, and you just have to always see the light, even if you don't see the light.
Thank you, Ahmed. Wow. Thank you, both of you. You're both touching on your personal journeys through arts administration, what got you there. And I just love that you shared, it's about allowing the artist to create the art, right? Creating experiences to allow that to happen, and making sure that there's structures in place that, it's on good standing of, governance and whatnot, so that the art can be made. I'm going to ask this question in terms of, how, if for potential administrators, how could they prepare for such a role? They're listening to this, like, yeah, I think I want to, go into arts administration. What would you offer? You've touched on, dropped some nuggets of wisdom and information that, could inspire them. But what I want to ask you, how could you prepare for such a role, given the challenges? And what's available on the continent? What would you suggest? Ismail?
I think firstly, you need to be daring and courageous. You need to be a calculated risk taker. You need to understand that, when you're in the making of art, when you're an artist, particularly in the performing arts, you create a production, and what you do for the next 6 weeks of that run is the same. Yes, of course, every night's performance gives you a certain wow feeling. But as an arts manager, every project that you create gives you a sense of fulfillment. Every artist whose career you have catapulted gives you an incredible sense of enjoyment, of being able to reflect that you've been part of somebody's life. Every time you see arts change a society, you become part of that activism. Every time you see a production giving new directions, somewhere it's your input, it's your leadership. You're a trailblazer. But I think, for me, one of the things about arts management is that it's, in many, many ways, it seems like a daunting task. And you think that you're going to have to deal with fundraising proposals, and you're going to have to deal with writing loads and loads of reports, because every funding proposal needs reports. And, we talk about freelancing, it's an insecure environment. But, when you have to be an arts manager and write funding proposals all the time, it can be just as insecure. But when you're able to be at the center and have vision and drive and be able to think beyond the moment, I think that is crucial for me as an arts manager. it's not to think about the production we're going to do today, but it's about what is my organization going to look like in 5 years' time. And I think if you have the capacity to be a visionary, then you survive in the arts, because you're working towards a particular dream, a particular goal. And whoever you bring alongside to work with you, whether that is co-workers in the management structure or the technical officers and the artists you work with, and the kind of partners, whether they're social partners or funding partners, they share that vision. And I think as arts managers, very often, people tend to work in bubbles, and we don't share our ideas with each other because we think somebody is going to steal our idea, or somebody's going to steal our proposal or our funder. My approach over the last 40 years has always been, I declare my proposal up front and I let people know about it. And that is not a threat for me. It's about simply saying, there's a vacancy for a funder, there's a vacancy for a partner, there's a vacancy for somebody who wants to come on board. And very often I find, by being able to do that, by being able to be transparent about that, partners come on board, funders come on board, and very often the kind of partners that come on board are not necessarily arts-led organizations. If I just take, our recent, over the last 2 years, we were able to bring the South African Human Rights Commission on board. Now, they're not an arts organization. Yes, of course, they've got to defend freedom of expression and freedom of creativity, because those are constitutional rights. But for the last 30 years, they've never placed themselves within an arts space. But by getting involved in our festival last year, they were able to come back to us and say, in your next festival, we would like to fund something. Or in your next festival, we would like to offer something. And I think very often as arts managers, when you are that kind of visionary, that is transparent, that is open, that doesn't feel threatened by sharing your ideas, you have greater levels of success. But also the key thing for me is that very often within the kind of organizations we're a performance-driven organization. We want targets. We want, what are we going to achieve? How many audiences are we going to get? But asking that question about how many audiences we need to get, for me, there's a crucial thing, is how many audiences are we engaging? Not how many audiences are we getting on our seats, but how many audiences are we engaging? Because the audiences that we engage are the audiences who will stay with us, who will be loyal with us during difficult and challenging times, who will defend us when we are being silenced and so forth. And I think, for me, this is why within our institution, I always take on emerging arts managers. I take about 10 to 14 emerging arts managers who are new graduates and who want to move into the arts administration or cultural leadership space. And we then give them free rein in, of course, within a kind of framework that it's not just coming to work and you as an intern, you're going to do this. No, you have a job description, you'll have targets, you deliver. And very often I'm astounded by what they achieve, because they push the boundaries for us. They make us as arts managers realign our positions, politically, socially, but also artistically. And that's what keeps an organization vibrant. But also, as somebody who's at my age, 65 and whatever, I'm not technically sus. I'm not the most social media savvy person. But the younger people in our organization do that. They do it for fun. They do it for enjoyment. And if we give them the reins to be able to do that, you're allowing your organization to be at the center of conversation. And when your organization is at the center of conversation, you're giving your organization a human face. And anything that is a human face is always appealing, attracts support, and learns to grow. And then with that comes the knowledge as an arts manager, because very often across the African continent, arts organizations are founded by people. They're driven by those people. They're led by those people. They think day to day. They don't have time to think about 4 years or 5 years' time. So founder syndrome can also evolve in organizations and entrench itself. And I think one of the key things which is essential for arts organization is to be able to think about succession. How do you grow an organization that at some point you know you will have to hand over the baton? And the question about what is the legacy that I want to leave as an arts manager is always crucial for me. And whenever I reflect on that question, that's when I find the joy of being in a cultural space.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Ismail. Whew, Ahmed.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with Ismail and what he says. I'll phrase it differently, but I think that one of the most important thing that people should be aware of is that an art and culture manager is a creative person. It's not just someone who's sitting there writing proposals and reports and being dull. It's a creative sector, and everyone in that sector is creative, from the small technician who finds a solution to a technical problem while running a show or building a set, to the art and culture manager. So I think this is something that artists need to understand and know, and also people in the sector, and also the person himself or herself, is that this is it's a very creative job. As Ismail said, there is a vision. You have to have a vision. You have to see things. You have to be in touch with what's on the ground, what is needed. Okay, and come up with creative solutions within that context, because the context is complicated. It is this, and the problems are complicated. And that what is the greatness of the job is that you're finding solutions to deal with such a complicated problem in such a complicated context. And in order to do that, you really have to be in touch with what's, with your community, with your society, and really know it and know its needs. I'm saying that because some people come into this job as like a producer from like a US kind of configuration. It's not that. This is not the job. This is much more creative. I think the other thing I would say is trust. This whole job, this whole profession is built on trust. Trust with the artists, the trust the artists have in you, in your organization, on you as an individual, but in the organization also. The trust that your audience have in you, and in your capacity in bringing them things that will challenge them within, again, a very limited context that limits all kind of creativity and novelty, and in order to, and that trust is won. It's not something that you get right away because you decided, okay, I'm going to do this great project, so it's going to happen. No, this trust is won, and it's worked for, and it comes over experiences and years of showing that trust, and so you can get it back. And I don't think you can trust someone if they don't trust themselves, and they don't trust their vision, their creativity, their what they believe in, and that's very important, because again, a lot of people think, okay, I'm just going to write this great proposal and I'm going to get that funding, and it's not about that. It's really about trust. It's a relationship that you build with all the partners and bringing them into the project. It could be a brilliant project, but if they don't trust you, no one's going to work with you, or no one is going to do it. Yeah, I mean, these are the for me the two main things really when it comes to art and culture management.
Absolutely. Thank you. Over to you, Tyler.
Well, this is and thanks, Ahmed. Thanks, Ishmael, and thanks, Natasha. Really interesting principles that you're kind of offering us to think about. The founder syndrome is really critical, especially on the continent. I think that because some of these things are individuals that cannot start this, they started on their own, and they, that's what they've spent their entire life, their blood, their sweat in. So at times letting go can be quite interesting, or challenging. The piece around trust, that we have to earn. It's not given to us. We have to earn it over the years. And really what I'm hearing is really understanding that those little things really matter a lot. On having a clear understanding of the specificity of the culture and the systems in which we're working in, so that we don't bring a Western, a US idea, or Canada or UK, and we can put any location there and bring it to another place where we have to understand the place-based thinking, and strategy. So I'll give an example here. When I arrived here many years ago, it's going to be 5 years in September this year. At some point, one of my friends just called me and he's like, "Hey, you are in," and because he knew where I was, and he's like, "Well, just to let you know, the way things work here, pick up your phone and call. Don't wait for emails to be answered. At times, if you have the opportunity, walk there and go say hi to them. That's how things work here." And if you're coming from a place where it's very email driven, you send email, you're hoping not. I'm not saying they don't reply. We don't reply emails. We reply emails. But what the person is trying to say is that there is that human element to it that is not just about sending email, that behind the email, if you take that extra step to make the phone call, to walk there, to have coffee, to sit down, and it's really fascinating, especially if somebody has trained in like the big urban cosmopolitan spaces, how those approaches, you just need to tweak it a little bit, and then you realize that that's how you start building the trust. Because like Ismail said, it's the relationship, it's the human face, and Ahmed, it's the human beings we're building the relationship with. So this, what both of you are saying, I can't agree, more. It's really profound. Those ideas that you're kind of bringing us together to really reflect and think about that. So thank you for that gift. The other thing as both of you are talking, I wanted to maybe if we go to some specifics. So for example, there's some aspect of art management. We talked about budgeting earlier on, or marketing, public relations and all that. And I'd love to start with Ahmed this time around. Let's flip the coin. Maybe an aspect of that you just want to be more specific about, in terms of how do you do your marketing campaign, for example? How do you do your budgeting? What are the things you think about? Or how do you think about, fostering a relationship, whether it's with your festival or, the things that you're doing? Ishmael, you mentioned these emerging art manager initiative or something like that. How do you do that? Like, how do you set up the space for those managers who are emerging? What are the kind of projects you give them? Like, I just want to put the thread a little bit, because again, I know that both of you have this immense wealth. And I'm like, yeah, I just want to get into more of your operations, if that's okay. And you don't have to give us the secret of the trade. That's a joke.
It's okay. Yeah, we give this the trick. It's all right. We're a family, so it's fine. No, I mean, as in the theater, when I work on a play, I think the best thing artistically about me is that I know how to channel the creativity of so many great artists into my work. This is what is great about me. I mean, I'm saying this is what my forte. I wouldn't say great about me, but what my forte is, that I work with great actors, great set design, I'm not shy or arrogant or want to own everything. For me, I kind of do the same as in my work as a culture management. I work with brilliant people, okay? So for example, I'm not as Ismail. I'm a generation that, we used to use the landline. We had 2 channels on TV that closed at midnight. That is my generation. So, I mean, I am like, when Tia told me, change your name on the picture on the thing, I can't do that. I'm unable to do that. I just really so there is a lot to delegate. Okay, you need to choose the right people and give them the trust, give them the encouragement. Kind of push them and help them in the right direction, and then you reap all the benefits. So for when it comes to marketing, I have very little input because I have no clue what they're talking about. When they talk about DMs and posting and stories, and I have no clue. I might maybe see them on Instagram, but I can't make the difference. So I don't try to impose anything. I could maybe contribute to an idea, say, why don't we do this and so on, but it's really led by the person in charge and the team. And one of the thing is to create a good teams for every department, so you can rely on them and depend on them. And again, I work with most of the team that we have are young, like they're 20 years younger than me. They're more in touch with what's happening. They're much more motivated. I mean, they're as I was 30 years ago, and they have a lot of creativity. It's just finding the right people to work with. That's very important. Now, when it comes to budgeting, because as I said, I mean, I have a little bit of personal history. My family name means herbologist, which is, back in the time, it's a profession in my family. I come from Upper Egypt, from Minya, which is about 300 kilometers down south. And my family trade, we are tradesmen. We are not farmers like a lot of Egyptians. We're tradesmen from the city. And my great grandfather was an herbologist, and my grandfather was, and one of my uncles and my cousins still are running that shop where they sell, herbs, all kind of herbs and medicinal herbs and stuff. And when I was a kid, I used to go in the summer. I was born in Cairo, raised in Cairo, all that, and stand in my grandfather's shop and help sell and weigh things and all that kind of stuff. And I believe that this gave me that sense of trade. Okay, being good in math, I've done my high school in mathematics, specialization in mathematics. So that kind of, so I'm much more in touch in budgets than with marketing, for example. I'll have a lot more input. We do have a CFO and an assistant accountant and everything, but when creating the project, for me, part of a successful project is to know the budget from the beginning and to be able to imagine that project that's in your head, not only put it down in paper and writing and in pitches and in stuff, but also put it down in numbers, because that's very important. It's important to know your capacity at the time. So, what your organization can do now with its capacity, its context, okay? And that is determined a lot by the budget. If you are an organization that has an overall turnover of $100,000 a year, and you want to do a project that is 1.5 million, there are a lot of chances this is not going to happen, okay? And how do you know that? By making a more or less an accurate budget from the beginning. It's never going to be inaccurate. For me, I always tell people, a budget is a living thing. This is why it needs to be very detailed, because it's in movement all the time, even when you get the money, even when you start making the project. This is the most alive part of your project, is that budget. It's constantly moving, so you have to be able to understand how to transform this narrative, this idea, into figures and numbers and very detailed. The more detailed you are, the better you move forward, the better you find money, and the better you manage that money and arrive at good shore. So you don't come halfway, spend all the money, or you don't arrive at the end and you've got money left, which is, a lot of people think that this is great. I think it's not, because every project can evolve. And if you had known that you'll end up with $10,000 extra, you would have added another element to that project that made it even better. So this is where I'm more involved in the operation, and in the strategy. looking at things not from a perspective of the festival, for example, but in the perspective of the festival with the rehearsal space and the co-working space and the theater that is run and the translation project, and seeing the bigger picture and helping everyone see the bigger picture with me. Because in a lot of cases, you can get tunnel vision, being focused. You have a various projects, but there's one project that is bringing you all the focus. We celebrated 20 years of our rehearsal space this year, but what really gave us the limelight internationally is the international festival, which is about 13 years old. So you really need to understand that the festival is, it is big and it brings all the attention, but there all the other stuff on the side are also important, need to stay alive and needs to keep working. So having the possibility to see everything and strategize on a bigger picture, not just on one thing.
Thank you. Ismail.
Sure, I definitely agree with Ahmed on that. As heads of our organizations, our role is to see the bigger picture. It is to envision large, but to be able to create a safe space, but also to create a playful place. As much as I talk about having an organization that has clear policies and certain kinds of regulatory environments and so forth, it has to be a place of fun. And I am particularly interested in people who come to our office and say, particularly when I'm interviewing for new positions of emerging arts managers, if people say to me, I would be with your organization because this is where I want to be in 5 years' time, you're probably not going to get the job. But if you say to me, I like the values of your organization and I like what your organization stands for, then you probably have a foot in the door because you are going to be a partner and a shareholder in our dreams. And for me, that is particularly important. And this is what we do with our young arts, emerging arts managers, is we allow them to become shareholders of our dreams. We allow them to envision with us. We allow them to be able to create some of our plans. We let them sit in our Monday meetings, our weekly meetings. We allow them to come up with new ideas and proposals. And we've had at least 2 of our emerging arts managers who wrote their own funding proposals because they had wonderful ideas, but they had the freedom and the support that we were able to give them because what they were envisaging and what they were creating supported our broader vision. So ownership for me within every member of that organization is crucial because when you strengthen an arm or a leg, it strengthens the whole body. When you injure one part or cut off one part of that body, the whole body suffers. The whole body becomes weak. So that for me is really crucial. But to come to your question around the emerging arts managers, I suppose as a former mathematics teacher, I'm a calculated risk taker. But I also would sometimes just depend on people who know our organization and people who follow our social media pages and so forth. And I'm like Ahmed. I'm not very savvy around all kinds of social media to Facebook. I don't know any of the other platforms and so forth. When we got a small grant to be able to employ 6 arts managers, emerging arts managers. We had a marriage of young people who are unemployed, who want to be in the arts, want any kind of a job. Although the grant said 6, I just took a chance and I took 12 people because there was no way that I could turn the other 6 people away. They had such incredible dreams and such passion. They wanted to be part of our organization because they shared our values. And I remember my colleague saying to me, but we don't have computers for them. We're not going to have the money to pay them. And I said, it'll come. I said, just offer them the positions. And I went on social media and I just posted on my own social media page. I said, where do old computers go to die? And I had a number of people who donated their secondhand or not loved computers to us. And by the next day, the 6 additional people had computers. They had telephones. They had the tools and the trade that one needed to be able to become functional within our office. And the people who contributed in kind didn't do it because those things were irritable and lying at home. it was because they shared in our values. So I think it's very clear as organizations that we constantly talk about our values, because when we're able to do that, we find friends, we people who are going to support us. So it's not always about money. It's chasing money as arts managers. It's about chasing friends. It's found, there's a whole community of philanthropists who want to give in kind to grow the stability and the sustainability of organizations. And I believe in that firmly, that, when we run organizations, we're not running it for ourselves. We are simply conduits as arts managers for other people's dreams and for other people's passion and skill to be realized through our organizations.
Well, this is really great. I love how both of you are you're decentering money and recentering resources more broadly. Because a lot of the time we're just talking about money, 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 money. And again, I'm not saying it's not good, it's great, but we need to think about resources more broadly. That it's about resources, human beings, networks, relationships, strategic partnership. And then of course the money is gonna come in and all that. Because at the end of the day, money doesn't hold itself, people, organization holds the money. So it's great.
Absolutely.
Natasha, is there anything you want to add? Any question? You throw it in there before we bring it to a close.
Yeah, I feel that this conversation has gone so well, so much wisdom shared and inspiration. Like I feel so lucky to just listen and hear these common things that bring us together, the values that come in when we talk about arts administration.
We're
Yeah.
not wise, Natasha, we're old.
And I appreciate all of it. I mean, yeah, being human and having a passion for the arts and the power that the arts can have on the world, and it's people that receive it and give art. So I'm just grateful to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. Well, Ahmed, there's part of the African maxim is that at times old age comes with wisdom. So, well, I'm going to bring things to a close here. But are there last thoughts, Ishmael and Ahmed, that you want to share with us? Maybe in terms of the tools that you use or tools that you want that again, or really future-scaping and future thinking things we need to think about that emerging administrators and managers rather need to think about, or last thoughts that you want to offer us as we bring this session to a close. I'll start with Ahmed and then we'll go to Ishmael. Ahmed, over to you.
Well, a lot have been said. I just I mean, this is this is something to ourselves, but also mainly to our young generations. We're a young continent. Times are very hard, really hard, not only in Africa, but all over the world. We're experiencing a genocide just right next door. It's very close to us and touches us specifically as Arabs and Egyptians, but I think it's also as human beings more than anything else. And it's nothing but a message that I would like to convey that to the young people that we come across all the time, and that they're so brilliant, as Ismail said, that they force you to keep on going and to keep that hope. I just want to say that I believe in our future. I believe that this is a passing phase, like all history, and that the coming time is our time, is their time, and they have to keep that in mind. We are the coming of age civilization, and we have to be up to that challenge by believing in ourselves, building ourselves and our community. It is hard, and I totally understand when artists in Egypt and in other countries around in the Arab world decide to move and leave, and it breaks my heart, but I understand that. But I just want to say that times will come and things will be different, and we always have to believe in that, because without that hope, it's very hard to deal with the present. So
Thank you, Ahmed. Ismail?
Thank you very much for that profound words, Ahmed. Yeah, I really think that where politicians fail, the arts fill that vacuum. And that even if we lose all our poets, all our musicians, all our dancers and visual artists with what is happening around the globe in terms of the political landscape, their words, their music, their poetry will still remain. That doesn't die. And that is what holds us together. It is what inspires us, and it is more human. And there couldn't be a time around the globe right now where we've seen that no single protest is without music. No single protest is without poetry. No single protest is without the drum beat. It's art that makes the language that holds us together in our common humanity. And right now, that's what the world needs so much more. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ismail and Ahmed. And the work that artists do, the music, the painting, the dance, the theater, at the end of the day it's really speaking to the wombs of time. It's gonna come back. And so thank you for really, really echoing that word around hope for the future, hope for a better tomorrow, hope in what we're creating. And we recognize the realities across the world right now, from the Arab world to Africa more broadly, to Europe and even North America and all of that. There is the higher, the rise of totalitarianism, the rise of fascism, and we can add as many as possible. Capitalism is still there. So many things like that continue to conscript, the art, continue to to silence what is being done, what artists are doing all over the world. So thank you for reminding us that. This is why we're doing this. This is why we wake up each day to support artists, to work in art organizations, to be art managers and different things like that. And thank you for sharing your wisdom today. We deeply appreciate you. Well, it's been over 90 minutes that we've been engaging with Ismail Mahomed and Ismail Mahomed, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Ahmed El Attar from South Africa and Egypt. And they've really shared with us really remarkable perspectives when it comes to art management, in their context and more broadly on the continent of Africa. And it's different initiatives that they are working with their team on their own side, but also helping us to really think about the future, not just only here and now, but what happened next. What are the things we need to think about? So thank you to both of you, and thanks to Natasha for co-hosting this together. And next week, I believe same time will be our third episode, and we're going to be having Alpha Belgasem and Chantel Deje. We're going to be focusing on funding, fundraising. What can we do differently? I believe that Ishmael and Ahmed have kind of given us another way to rethink about funding, about money, to think differently, to think about resources more broadly. So we're going to be taking on that particular thinking and thought next week as we focus more on fundraising and funding on the continent. What do we need to do differently? How do we need to think about it? What are the values that need to guide these operations around funding and fundraising, around development? Because these are critical questions we need to ask ourselves. So any one person that we hire, whether full-time or part-time, the reality is that it's, we have to pay them. If we're doing festival, it's resources, particularly money, is really critical. So we're going to be really diving into that next week. Yes, we confirm that it's same time, 12 p.m. EST, next week, Tuesday, and we're looking forward to having both Chantel and Offer to join us. And Dr. Segun Afolabi is going to be joining us. We're going to be having a French interpretation, simultaneous interpretation of that particular episode. Part of what we're trying to do here on this series is also to contribute in some ways to that language barrier, because those are other barriers on the continent. We have the economic, the mobility barrier. It's also the language, where some work in Arabic, some in English, some in French, some in Portuguese. It's like we're divided across different sectors and different spaces. So we're hoping that with that French interpretation, that can also offer opportunity for our French colleagues, our colleagues from the French-speaking part of the continent, to be able to join us. So with that, we want to bring this to a close. Thank you so much. A special thank you to all our partners, Howrah TV, the Center for Social Engaged Theatre, Pan-African Creative Exchange, Kininso Creative, Theatre Mission International, and its a social enterprise, Mobile Research Lab, and LACITE at the University of Regina. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to be here with us today. My name is Tawa Folabi, and I'm signing out. Looking forward to welcome you again to third episode next week, Tuesday. And I'll pass it to Natasha for our final readings.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this rich conversation. I look forward to continue co-hosting of this series. Have a wonderful day, evening, week, and I hope that our paths cross again soon. So take good care. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, super. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's nighttime now. You're in South Africa. Super.
Have a lovely night over
Good
there.
meeting you on your Natasha. Thank you, Taiwo. Thank you very much. And Theo as well. All the best to all of you. And we'll try to catch up as viewers. Good. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.